welcome and introduce Mr. Ahmed Nabil Mahmoud. He's going to be talking about securing our cloud digital transformation. On behalf of Rocheston and the Reinvent team, I welcome you to the conference, Ahmed. How are you doing today?
All is fine. All is fine. Thanks a lot for having me.
It's a pleasure for us to host you at this conference, and we look forward to hearing about your exciting topic. Now, you can go ahead and get your screen share started, and I'm going to tell the audience a little bit about you in the meantime. Sure. So Ahmed has more than 19 years of experience in the field of information technology, systems, infrastructure, project management, information security, app development, automation, IT management, and holds several professional IT certifications from Microsoft, Cisco, ISACA, ISC, PMI, CWNP, and PECB. Ahmed is currently the Regional Information Security and Risk Manager in an international financial institution. He has been the Global Security Architect Manager at one of the top oil and gas companies, and CISO and CIO of the top engineering company in Egypt and the Middle East. Ahmed was awarded the Microsoft Most Valuable Professional Award in Enterprise Security, Cloud and Data Center Management for 8 years, from 2013 to 2020, for his community leadership in Egypt and the Middle East region. Recently, in July 2020, Ahmed was awarded the Microsoft Regional Director Award as well. Ahmed recently received the MISA CISO 100 Award from the MISA conference held in Dubai for the top CISO executives in the Middle East, CISO 50 Award, Egypt CISO of the Year Award 2018, and was finalist in EC-Council CISO Awards of 2018. With that, I'm going to hand the stage over to Ahmed. Ahmed, over to you. I'm sure the audience are very excited to hear your topic. Over to you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for this nice introduction. Just to confirm, I'm audible, correct?
Yes, you are audible. We can see your screen. All good.
Excellent. Thanks a lot again. Welcome, everyone. As mentioned, whether it's the morning, the afternoon, and the evening, I'm very excited to be joining such nice event where a lot of great mindsets are here to network together and share some ideas, and hopefully this will be beneficial for everyone. So I've been already introduced, and thanks for the introduction. And without further ado, let's get into the topic, which is one of my favorite topics actually nowadays, which is the cloud security, where I've been focusing for the last maybe 8 to 9 years on the cloud and security of the cloud. So when we think about the cloud security, the first thing will come to our minds is the NIST definition. The NIST definition lays the basis of the cloud. And when you think about the cloud from the NIST perspective, you find that's the on-demand self-service, the network access, the resource pooling, the elasticity, and the measure service. But does this really help us as security professionals? Is there anything related to security when it comes here to the cloud? It's more about the availability, more about the services, and more about the IT perspective. However, the cloud is still a very scary thing for us as the security professionals. And why is this? Because the issue is that the threat itself is accelerating. When you think about the latest attacker techniques, you think about them, they are really evolving. They are rapidly increasing. A lot of maturity now is coming. Back in the old days, I don't want to seem a little bit old, but maybe 10, 15 years, most of the attacks will be nation state attacks or some script cases. But now we're seeing a lot of maturity when it comes to attacker business models. New criminals entrants are able to be quickly and effectively able to attack our networks. The attack itself is evolved from the normal mass distribution malware to a tailored and target malware to something like fileless malware, where there's no file at all, where things like PowerShell, for example, is used to load the attack code directly inside the memory, and other similar methods, of course, to the malware-less attacks. And with the malware-less attacks, we think about social engineering, the credential theft, and stuff like this. All of this are gearing towards being a little bit worried when it comes to the cloud. Another aspect is your enterprise itself. Our enterprises are going through a massive digital transformation. No one can deny this. Think of the COVID, think of the pandemic. The pandemic, I think it was a funny thing mentioned in most social media. It was the main driver for the digital transformation that we are going through it now. So many businesses are transforming rapidly to compete with digital native startups. This is the main thing. They need to be alive in this community, to be alive in the business, to compete with digital native startups that are coming up. We need to transform ourselves. This change is driving our need for the security transformation. So when you think about the security transformation and the digital transformation, I think of it that it provides both challenges and opportunities for the security. Challenges, of course, are significant when you think about the security challenges, all this kind of challenges and the connectivity. However, the opportunity, which we really need to focus, there's a massive opportunity that we can solve as security professionals, long-standing security problems with this next generation of the computing. For a long time, we're going to run something called the dual perimeters. We're going to have the old perimeter, the classic perimeter, which is the network controls. Remember the old days when you used to go to your own company, you need to access your computer from your own network, you need to connect on the server on your own network. You had something called the network controls, where you're protecting it with things like firewalls, IPS, DMZ, and all these kind of things. And as the movies, now you have to pass through the firewalls and enter the DMZ and all this stuff. Now we are transforming. We are in a transition period where we're going to manage two styles of security perimeters to protect both legacy workloads and modern scenarios. And from my point of view, this hybrid scenario is going to run for some time. There are some drivers that were just driving this adoption of this identity perimeter, which is the prevalence of attackers using identity tactics and the need to protect assets where network controls are not available. Remember, when you're moving to the cloud, you lose this network control. You're moving to a different place, to a remote place where your typical classical network controls are not there. So cloud service, application, mobile, think of Internet of Things, all of this, you're losing your network classical perimeter, and your main focus will be on the identity. This is the main thing. So one big advice, if you are moving the cloud, and we are all moving there or using these new technologies, more focus should be put on the identity, on the privileged identities, and each organization should have a full privilege identity or privilege access management solution and framework till we reach at the end the fully zero trust. During this transition, we're going to reach at the end the fully zero trust, where we are using the whole cloud and IT, and then we will be zero trust. We will not be trusting anything. For each connection to each service, for each connection to each application, for each connection to each resource, you will be validated and asked at each one about your identity, which is your new perimeter. However, there are some imperatives and opportunity, as we mentioned, to reimagine the security. So while bringing the challenges, this new generation of information security represents an unprecedented opportunity for a fresh approach. Think about your applications that you've never been able to integrate them on a single sign-on or Active Directory, all this kind of thing. They've been using weak accounts, they've been using local accounts. So this is a real opportunity to solve some very old security problems, as well as an opportunity to transform the relationship with business functions and leaders. Now you get a better visibility and control over your blind spots. There's a lot of blind spots in your architecture, maybe they've not been tackled. Again, the agility and efficient threat protection by using things like the cloud and the support of the cloud. And then finding and protecting your intellectual property. Remember, at the end of the day, moving to the cloud gives you the dilemma of your data. It's still your main focus, your data, and how you can protect it. But with all this, we come to very, very important questions. So does moving to the cloud really mean we are secure? Because we mentioned a lot of opportunities and challenges, all the kind of things. So are we really secure by moving to the cloud? And then let me get back to summer 2019, so 1.5 years. One of the major incidents or attacks that happened maybe, which is the leakage of some like 100 million individuals' data was stolen from Capital One AWS cloud estate. This was one of the major things at that point in time. And many of us have speculated when this happened that this breach was perhaps the result maybe of a kind of a 0-day or a massive attack or insider attack, where the attacker took some advantage, some access maybe or something like this. However, the problem actually stemmed to be apart from a misconfigured WAF, a web application firewall, a misconfigured WAF that Capital One have been using as part of its operations on Amazon Web Services, on Amazon Cloud, for example. So this was mainly a misconfiguration. The WAF was misconfigured with an excessive privileges, and the attacker was able to use this misconfiguration in order to read and get this sensitive data. So it boiled at the end to our configuration, to the human factor. So yes, the cloud can provide us with a lot of opportunities, with a lot of tools, a lot of good things that we can use, but we need to use it. We need to leverage these things to use it. A few other examples, the major cloud database leaks. When you think about the major cloud database leak in this table, for example, most of it is because there was no proper access control. And this leads us to the main thing about the fundamental thing when it comes to the cloud, which is our cloud customer shared responsibility model. We need to understand that now the cloud services is split. We're splitting the operational responsibilities of the workloads between the cloud providers, which is either Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Azure, whatever, and the customer himself, us, the organizations. It's critical that we need to understand that this shared responsibility model comes with some responsibilities on us, some accountability. So yes, the cloud will provide you the framework, for example, and the platform to create an MFA, for example, to create your identity, to do, for example, a cloud SIM, to have your own mobile device management, MDMs. However, the data is still, you are accountable for data. No one is protecting it. It's your accountability. The devices, end devices, mobiles, laptops, remote devices, again, your identities. These are the main things. So there's some tests handled by the cloud provider, while others are handled by your organization. And the workload, of course, responsibility will vary depending whether you're using SaaS model, PaaS model, or IaaS model. So the top 3 things when you think about the cloud security model. Top 3 things that you need to think about: data, information protection. We need to think about the information protection, how we can protect our information. This is not just protecting the information during the transit maybe, but it's full protection of the information during the full life cycle. Think about the full information life cycle. It starts by beginning by discovering your own information, discovering which information is critical, discovering which information includes, for example, credit cards, which information includes, for example, some procurement data, some confidential data, some of your main vital things on during according to your business, some of your copyrights. This is about discovery. This is the first step. And then after discovering them, how you need to classify it. So this full approach from discovery to how you classify it, and then after classifying it according to the classification, whether it's confidential, internal, something available for public or general use, how you protect it. Definitely the sensitive data will be protected, for example, in different way than the internal data, which is in a different way than the public data. And then at the end, how you're going to monitor it, how people are accessing it, how people are using it, are the proper users accessing it or not. This is a full life cycle. And actually, when you think about the common industry approach will rely mainly on controls, maybe on devices, storage, and network. However, we need to think really from a holistic point of view. And then after doing this information protection, you need to integrate this with your own systems to have the full ecosystem, which is the enterprise integration, which is the DLP approach. So if something went wrong, so you classified as the documents and you put the proper restrictions, all these kind of things. But does this mean that there's no leakage? There's no instance? Definitely not. So you need to integrate this with the full system, with your full system, full ecosystem. And what about the DLP? What about the point of exits from my organization? Whether it's the firewalls, whether it's the cloud, whether it's the cloud storage, whether it's mobile. So you need to think about this from a kind of holistic approach. When you think about information protection, try to start simple. You need to define first what to classify and define where to classify it. Is it on some file servers, SharePoints, cloud storage, everything? What are the conditions and the classification policies? And start first with the classification. I've implemented a couple of information protection rights in different organizations, and really it's when it goes to the users, because I mean the configuration itself is a couple of clicks, but when it comes to the users, asking them to classify and protect, and he will not be able to open this file if he doesn't have access. Sometimes this is the main dilemma. So the main challenge when it comes to information protection will be with the users and the awareness and their education. So start only by classification. Let them only classify first to understand the classification. When they're a little bit mature and your organization is mature, start implementing your protection controls on each classification and then doing the monitoring. The second part, with the things that the main customer task now that we need to focus on when going to the cloud is the identity. Think about the identity and the challenges what comes with the identity. A lot of challenges, phishing, password spray attacks, a lot of things. We need to think about a very comprehensive approach to secure our identities against all the threats. So few recommendations. I'm just trying here to lay some of my best practice and recommendations. When you think about the identity, it's not now, MFA is not only for the admins, but MFAs now should be for all users. And we need to start exploring new things like the passwordless and the biometrics. Again, as you remember from the previous few slides back, I mentioned we're moving to a zero trust based on everything, based on your endpoint state, the behavior, MFA. So MFA as a base should be for everyone. This will protect from the phishing, the spray attacks, the compromised device, all this kind of thing. And then when you start moving to the admins, think about the PAM. Think about the privilege identity and privilege access management place. You need to have some kind of privilege. The account that I'm an administrator is using to administer my systems should not be the same account I'm using to connect to my mobile or access my internet and access my email sources. This should be a different account, access from a different machine called a Privilege Access Workstation or PAW. This is a full IAM program that we need to think about it. So we need to have another credential, and these credentials can be only accessed by the Privilege Workstations. And if someone else try to access this account from a different machine, there where it comes your SIM use cases, there where it comes your monitoring. This account is accessing from a different PAW where it's aligned with. This means that something's going wrong. This is what's called the IAM program. And then the third part, which is the third-party risk. When you think about the third-party risk, think about 5-6 years back when you need to invite someone to connect on your network. The only solution at that point of time was that creating some kind of temp account for this vendor to connect and work with you, or maybe this partner. And then these accounts are temp, as I said, or guest. Sometimes they'll fall. Sometimes they're not monitored. Sometimes the agreement will end while the account is still accessed. And now the beauty of moving to the cloud, and one of the opportunities that we mentioned that we can leverage is leveraging things like SSO, SAML. So now you can invite your vendors, customers, partners. They can all connect with you using federation. They can connect even with their Facebook and social accounts. They can connect with their own organization accounts. And you can enforce your requirements. So you can enforce having, for example, MFA. They will not be able to connect without having MFA on their organization account to be able to connect. That's to eliminate the third parties. So these are all the bucket of the identity that we need to think about when going to the cloud. And then finally, think about the clients, the PCs, the mobile, the remote devices. Think about a holistic, generic mobile device management solution. A full capable endpoint protection platform. And when I think about endpoint protection platform, I'm not thinking about just having an antivirus on your laptop or your machine. Think about full endpoint, which offers something like the EDR, the detection response, which offers something like the DLP capabilities, which work on both your Windows, Linux, Mac, iOS, and Android, and name it. Again, you're looking for a holistic thing when I'm going. And this is really important when you pick your partner, when you pick your vendor, how they integrate together to form what's called an ecosystem. Remember, again, 3-4 years back, the main issue when you ask any CISO or someone responsible for the information security is that they are managing something more than 60 plus vendors inside their network. Someone for monitoring, someone for the antivirus, someone for DLP, someone for the mail service, someone for the cloud. And that's the main issue. You need to pick the vendors that can work together to provide you with a full ecosystem that you can manage your network through. Moving also to the cloud, integrate something native cloud tools. So these are the 3 famous native cloud tools when you move to the cloud. So you're not moving with your old traditional tools, but there's some new tools available. So as companies are trying now to move their infrastructure, their products, their service to the cloud, this is coupled with this rise of new technologies. Dockers, Kubernetes, of course, and all this kind of thing. And this is difficult to track these assets. Now, think about the Kubernetes and Dockers, a very, very minimal things, a very simple thing that anyone can trigger it. And with the new agility and the DevOps, maybe not the IT people are spanning these things, but actually some business users. That's where comes something like the CASB, the Cloud Security Access Broker, or the CWPP, the Cloud Workload Protection Platform, and the CSPM, which is the Cloud Security Posture Management. And this one image I like from Gartner, it's positioning each tool, whether using SaaS or IaaS or PaaS. The most famous thing, of course, which is the CSB, which is the Cloud Security Broker, which are the most famous thing, which is the on-premise cloud-based security enforcement point between the cloud service consumer and the cloud service provider. This is like the proxy for connecting from, for example, your on-prem or hybrid solution to the cloud. And it consolidates multiple types of security enforcement, like the authentication, like the mapping, the profiling, the encryption, and all these kind of things. It's commonly used for example, Salesforce, Office 365, and other SaaS applications. These are the common things that we need to think about when going to the cloud. We have some native cloud tools that we need to leverage and utilize. Then when you think about the cloud drivers or challenges, when you think about it, first thing we need to think about and consider is our risk assessment. So risk management needs to be an integral part of any cloud strategy process. I'm not going to the cloud because it's very shiny and nice and brilliant. And as you're going to see in a couple of slides, it's not maybe the most cost-efficient option for everyone. So this is very important to have this kind of risk assessment. The long promoted best practice of formulating some specific cloud exit strategy before committing to any cloud project is becoming increasingly important. Think about the risk assessment. Think about answering this question. Why would you like to exit at one point of time? And this will base your risk assessment. So things like compliance, for example, might be an important thing. Legal compliance, regulatory compliance. We're seeing now a change, a big change, where a lot of regulators now, especially for the high industry industries like the pharma and the banking, where they're now allowing customers to use the cloud with some given conditions. So we need to understand the compliance things. We need to think about the security. We think about the availability as well, disruptions, data loss, the agility. Are they able to support some future needs, the moves between one another? We need to think about all this when we are moving to the cloud. When you think about the cloud from a CXO's lens, we need to understand a couple of things, a very important thing. We need to have a plan, because managing cybersecurity is very challenging and requiring always answering the right question. And there comes the leadership. The leadership are always and ultimately responsible for being aware of these risks. To what? To the reputation, to the organization. It's not about only a few systems down. It's about the reputation of your system in your market. How are you behaving in this market? How are you competing in this market? So we need to show a plan for an aggressive cyber risk management. We need to show a communication plan for risks and incidents, which is very important. And now it's even mandated. How our security policies are aligned with the compliance security terms. Two main things when you think about this, which is the effectiveness and the efficiency. Effectiveness, are we doing it well? And then the efficiency, how much is enough? Should I add more and more? How much is enough for my business? When I think about the effectiveness, two main things you need to consider, which is increasing the cost of attacks for the attackers, make it very costly for them, and then decreasing your mean time of remediation. You need to ensure that you can remediate in a very, very efficient time. So we need to ruin the ROI. Yes, there is an ROI for the attackers. So we need to ruin it completely. We need to increase the cost of attack for them. At the same point, we need to understand that we need to decrease our own mean time of remediation. Organizations should be focused on building capabilities to rapidly first detect. After detection, we need to respond. And after responding, we need to recover from the attacks in a very, very, very short time. So we can limit the time the attacker can cause damage to the organization. So if each investment, whether it's time, energy, money, is added to your resilience, or it's ended somewhere else. And this will lead us to something called the resilience, which we'll be discussing later. Efficiency, how much is enough, as you mentioned. So efficiency, how much is enough? Is my estimated risk lower than my risk appetite? So to know exactly how much security is enough, the organization must compare their actual business risks and mitigations to the risk appetite and see whether it's acceptable. Remember, there is no zero risk. It's kind of an acceptable risk for the organization. We need to compare this. This may be a simple question, but the answer or the solution, this will require a lot of business and technical analysis to understand the organization risk appetite, their exposure, the mitigation effectiveness, whether whatever controls they have any effective or not, to determine actually their efficiency. Please understand that most of the attackers have what called a supply chain. So the threats your organization will likely face is coming from an interconnected ecosystem, not just a simple attack or attack groups. Think about most of the attacks that happened during the last 2 years. This is a full ecosystem integrated. Behind most attackers, we have a supply chain of black market and gray market of services and tools. Think about the gray market we're having. So a lot of attack service now you can buy it. So think about the dark market. Most of the attack services, to be honest, are notably inexpensive. Maybe some few exceptions, as you can see from me, like 0 days. So this sampling of price ranges. Think about denial of service. For example, having denial of service for 1 month costing you less than $1,000. So this is kind of the dark market products, which is available now for usage. Back again to our most important thing, which is the resiliency. So we are having this challenging space. It's very hard to quantify our cyber risk. We try to quantify it anyways, but it's very difficult. And the mitigations also is very difficult. And it's getting harder. Now the GDPR is requiring that less than 72 hours, we need to have a notification. So 72 hours, can you really scope your breach? Can you really detect the breach within only 3 days? Given that, I remember I attended a couple of events 1 year, 2 years back, and they're saying that the typical attack, especially the persistence one, are there in your network maybe for 7 or 8 months undetected. And now they're asking us for less than 72 hours for a breach notification, which is really comes to a different thing. Again, it's the cyber resiliency. We need to start with the right mindset. We need to think about the proper technology approach, the focus on the hygiene, what are the measurement of success? Security initiatives and priorities must be aligned with our business objectives and strategy to avoid, first of all, neglecting the critical business assets and to avoid wasting time on the wrong direction. We need to be focusing mainly. Mindset means that your mindset should be mainly starting with the assuming compromise. No one is immune. We have seen this. I guess all of us are aware of what happened at the end of 2020. It was really a very challenging year, and it ended with the most drastic, I think, attack that happened across all times since the internet. And look about who was impacted. Huge cybersecurity companies, not just the normal customers or normal users. So this is what comes for the cyber resiliency. So key measure of success, remember the cost of attack, the mean time to remediation, the increase of the cost of attack and reducing the mean time of remediation when it comes to you. A very nice quote that I saw about an unnamed CFO, which is the problem with the CISOs and the entire cybersecurity field for that matter, is that you keep asking for more money and resources, but cannot guarantee or even articulate why I'm buying them. This is very important, and it captures, this captures the essence of some key communication challenge between organization and their business leaders. I've been with the leadership. We think that they don't understand what they're doing, and they think of us as a cost center. The alignment is not there. It's our role. We are not a cost center anymore. It's our role to align our strategy, to align whatever we're doing from controls and risk management, to align it with the business and to be an enabler to the business. We need the business, we need to enable it to achieve more. Remember during the pandemic, I always use this example, a lot of companies lost A lot of companies went out of business, while others flourishes and gained a lot because their platforms, their security, their IT were ready and aligned, and they supported them during the pandemic to provide different services remotely for everyone. Another driver and challenge, which is the cloud cost, which is the very, I think marketing have played a lot of role in this. So marketing always just go to the cloud. Going from the on-prem to the cloud, you're going to save a lot of time in implementation and cost on the kind of things. So the top figure is what the belief. However, the reality is the below figure. So think about it. Using the cloud to get one CPU for the next 6 years, one CPU only, one CPU, but for 6 years, has a different cost than getting 6,000 CPUs for the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes. When you think about this, this is the real essence of the cloud. The first, which is one CPU, might be more expensive in the cloud, like renting a house or buying. Remember back in the old days when they say that renting something for more than 5 years is not efficient because the break-even comes maybe after 4 or 5 years. So if you're planning to rent something for 10 years, then you better buy it. You're going to have some initial cost at the beginning, but to be cheaper at the end. Well, if you're looking for only short-term renting, for example, I'm living alone now. I'm thinking of 1-bedroom apartment, and then 2 years from now, maybe I'll get married. I'm going to look for another 2-bedroom apartment, and then maybe I'll have some kids. So I'm changing. All these kind of things, short-term planning and changing. So this might not be expensive because I'm just paying what I need. So if I got from the beginning the big house, it would be costly for me. So think about this because there's a lot of things happening when you're moving from on-prem to the cloud. Remember, you need to modernize a lot of your tools. You need to change, for example, local tools would have local accounts with SO. You need to ensure that your team and yourself have the best cloud soft skills. There is a lot of software change, migration cost itself. So there will be a little bit hype at the beginning, and then it comes down. Again, depending on picking the right workload when you're moving to the cloud, because it's totally different. The cloud is totally different when you think about it than other things. Another item, which is the change role of the IT and the security, which is very, very important thing. So when you think about this, as the enterprise architecture and the technology are moving, we need to think about the new role of our IT functions and security people. We need to train them. We need to maybe recruit different talents. We need to have
Ahmed, sorry to interrupt you, but your screen share is gone.
Oops, let me try to share it again. Am I back now?
Yep, you're back.
Sorry for this.
Yep, you're back. Yeah,
okay.
you're back now.
No.
Okay.
As I mentioned, we talk about the role of the IT and the security and how it's changing, how we need to change this kind of role, how we need to think of difference, because now we are not involved in a more and more day-to-day operations. A lot of things have been taken now with the cloud. So we need to think about DevOps, how we're going deploying. We need to think about how we're going to pick the vendors, the selection of vendors. Again, we had an issue, for example, with the third-party risks. We have a very famous example that happened recently. How are we going to do with the third party? Do we have a proper vendor management, let's say, platform, framework, standard for selecting, picking, and certifying our third-party vendors or not? Are we doing this using an old tools, Excel sheets, or now we are using the latest automated things? This is very, very important thing to understand when you think about the new role. A lot of things will be now more in the management, recovery planning, the background checks, for example, the monitoring of all performance, the cost and the budget. In addition, most of us now will be more responsible in the training, awareness for the people, for the user, educating them on a lot of things about the security, about the privacy. Another aspect is coming now, which is a different topic, but worth to be mentioned, which is the privacy. And all about the privacy and the ethics. So we need to think about these foundation services that's changing. We are more to what we can say like now, as Gartner mentioned, it's more that IT department adopt a role to cloud services similar to the HR department with regards to human resources. This is the new thing that we need to think about. we need to ensure that we are carefully selecting our providers. It's very important to carefully select cloud provider that are entrusted with your data and the systems that your organizations are relying on. We need to ensure that they're compliant, meeting all the compliance, of course. We need to ensure that alignment, the business model alignment. Does this provider compete with my organization? This is something I don't want to go through it. The ownership, the mining, security, privacy, transparency. Think about the agility, for example. We mentioned before things like Dockers and the virtualization and all these kind of things. Think about the simplicity of moving, avoiding things called like vendor lock-in. You're with one cloud provider, you're very and fully happy this year. Maybe you want to switch to another cloud provider. You need to think how you're going to switch. If you're completely tied with this one, you'll not be able to do this. Think about the latest technologies available now in the market that allows you to completely switch in a very native and easily way to another cloud provider. And finally, we need to have an architecture through implementation. This is a full architecture, starting from the cloud strategy, starting from the architecture, identifying which, remember, again, we need to identify and prioritize which loads are going to the cloud, determining the cloud deployment options, what kind of deployment I'm going to do, developing the business case. There's a business case. There's an ROI going there. We need to pay back for this. Maybe it's not paying back at the beginning, but there should be something like this. And then how we're going to implement this while we're going through it. A very, very nice quote from Satya Nadella mentioning that businesses and users are going to embrace technology only if they can trust them. Only if they can see the value of it and they can trust it, they will be more and more going to technology. I remember a few things when the pandemic happened and the problem with the Zoom and a lot of people mentioning it, what happened lately with WhatsApp and their privacy. And then people now are starting to understand this. People start this and trying to trust one application from another. And when they start trusting it, they start heavily depending and using it. Finally, quick cheat sheets and recommendations. Again, cloud strategy should follow your business strategy. You need to establish cloud security policy. A lot of companies doesn't have this cloud security policy. Again, you need to mention that this cloud use is based on our risk domain, cost optimization, and again, optimization, not full reduction, resiliency, portability. Remember, you can move. And in huge organizations, they are using multi-cloud. They are, for example, using Microsoft and Azure, and Amazon, and hopping in between them. So this is the portability to avoid vendor lock-in. And then the cloud selection and monitoring that we mentioned lately. That's it for me. I'm very happy again to be part of this event, and I think we have maybe a couple of minutes if there's any question.
Hi, Ahmed. Can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, wow, that was a very, very in-depth, in-detail presentation. So I kept thinking of a couple of questions to ask you, but then the next slide, you already covered the answer for that question. Anyhow, we do have a couple of questions from the audience. I'm going to start off with the first one. Now, risk assessments are a luxury for a company to conduct. How about making it mandatory as part of a regulation for clients like banks and hospitals?
So when it comes to banks, for example, and the hospitals or the medical institutes, it's becoming mandated now. There's a lot of regulators, and they are mandating this kind of risk assessment, and they're mandating it to be yearly. So to survive in this field, this must be done. And you can imagine the amount of penalties on each of these organizations if these risk assessments are not done. And for some regulations, even these risk assessments need to be done by an external entities as well.
Okay, so in your opinion, is carrying it out yearly more than enough, or do you think the intervals need to be shorter?
Sorry?
In your opinion, is carrying out risk assessments yearly more than enough, or do you think the intervals between risk assessments should be probably twice a year or probably quarterly?
So there's no ideal solution, to be honest. The industry best practice saying once a year. And if there's any major change in between, this can be conducted. So let's assume you're doing once a year. In between, you had, for example, a major acquisition, a major transformation, acquiring, maybe selling something, then another one would be done. But they're saying the industry best practice is minimum 1 year.
Okay. The next question is, how does a WAF differ from a traditional firewall?
So the WAF mainly is, think about it as a reverse reverse proxy. The WAF is for publishing the applications, allowing the outsiders to come to these applications. Think it as a little bit as a reverse one. And by the way, of course, some of these acronyms also comes with the marketing. So a lot of also firewalls offer the WAF services as well with their firewall.
Okay. Next question is, how about holding a CEO of a company responsible for a breach, maybe cut his salary by 20% as a fine for accountability reasons?
That's true. So, I mean, at the end of the day, there's also a famous saying that the boards or the CEO are the top ones accountable when it comes to a breach or incident. That's why it's very important to be aligned with them. That's why nowadays, actually, we try to impose this on the leaders and the CEOs. Nowadays, CEOs are asking for this because they know that they're accountable for this. Think about things like GDPR. The fines can reach like 20 million. And then this is something massive, and most of things like this. And at the end of the day, of course, the CISO will be fired 100%. But at the end of the day, the ultimate accountability lies with the board of directors and the CEO of the company.
Okay. The last question is, what about data masking? Does it help in any way?
So, I mean, data masking is one. So, data masking, tokenization, all these kind of things. Yes, it really helps. Again, let's think about the risk assessment, as we mentioned. What data you're doing. For example, if you're dealing with credit cards, all those kind of things, then there's a lot of things that happens. One of them is data masking report. So it depends first, again, what is the proper cost you want to pay for what? So if you're running, let's assume a business with $100,000, and then you're having a budget 1 million for security, then there's something wrong. But you're running a business 100 million, and you have a 2-3 million budget for security, that's true. So you need to understand exactly what are you protecting. And the first thing is security. I need to understand first what I'm protecting. And when I understand what I'm protecting, and when I classify it, when I understand what are my crown jewels, for example, what are the key priorities, I can think of it. Is it a payment card? Is it health? Is it something privacy? Or is it maybe normal business and industry like oil and gas or utilities? Depends, one of them. But one of the mitigations for data is tokenization, masking, all these kind of things.
Okay, so I think we're done with the questions, Ahmed. Thank you. That was a truly wonderful session. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So your points were very clear and easy to understand. And we look forward to having you for our future Reinvent conferences as well. Have a great rest of the day. We're sorry, I know today's your day off. So please enjoy the rest of the day with your family and stay safe and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.